So today we are going to start an exploration into the world of artificial intelligence. I want to look at its widespread adoption and integration into different industries and just everyday life as we know it. AI has been around in various forms since around the 1950s, but only recently, in the last couple decades, primarily in the last, you know, 13 to 14 years has it really become huge due to the internet and widespread uses of social media, just all the data that is out there right now. And you throw together that with the advancements in computers, computing power, and there's just become no real limit for what we can do with artificial intelligence. I think this is where a lot of the controversy in artificial intelligence stems from right now, and is the fact that there is no limit. We don't really know how far it can go. We don't know. I think there's a lot of misnomers out there on AI and how it's created and controlled, and most of it is completely beyond me and my knowledge base on it. I've learned quite a bit in doing research for this podcast, but I've barely scratched the surface on what where we're headed with it, and how it's being used. One thing I have understood is that whether we like it or not, it's been integrated into all of our lives on a daily basis. If you have a smartphone, then you interact with AI every single day, and all day long, numerous times a day. Any apps that you're using, voice assistants, facial recognition, Alexa, Siri, etc. Those are all various forms of artificial intelligence. You know, but what I really want to do with this podcast, instead of getting bogged down with the history of it and just the general nitty gritty of it, what I really want to do is we're going to conduct some interviews. I want to bring in some people from different industries out there, and I want to talk to them about their opinions on artificial intelligence and how it's being used and integrated into their everyday work life. I want to find out from them if it's a negative experience, a positive experience, if they see long-term integration, if it's helped with efficiency. There's all kinds of questions and implications that surround artificial intelligence and its widespread use and adoption into everyday work life. So I'm going to stop babbling and want to into our first interview with a really good friend of mine and phenomenal doctor, Dr. D. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. D. Really appreciate you giving us some time and kind of your feelings in the medical industry, and I think it's best to maybe start just you kind of give a brief introduction to yourself and your background.
Awesome. Thanks for having me today, Ryan. It's a really interesting time in medicine, and I'm happy to be here to kind of talk about this. My name's Dr. D, as he said. I am a family practice doc that has been traditionally Western trained. Trained in the Midwest, and have worked in multiple different settings, from rural to urban to big hospitals to small hospitals, and really over the past 10 years transitioned to more administration. And what that really means is, being a family practice doc, helping people one-on-one, really developing policy and looking at populations as a whole to really see how we can impact and make a population healthier and happier long term. And really, that's been my goal throughout my career, is to help people. And this transition to administration the past 10 years has really been a fantastic journey, and I think it kind of plays into your conversation a lot today, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, because in theory, you would be the one to now in administration to implement the use of artificial intelligence in your industry, correct?
Absolutely. We're still on the cusp of learning how it can help us in medicine. We're really struggling to understand the applicable uses, but also there's within the industry, there's money to be made, and so there's lots of different vendors out there offering solutions on utilization of AI early. And we can talk about a few examples today. And the other thing is interesting is how do we use AI and put guardrails on it to limit the potential risk of it, but also use it to our advantage because it's such a great. I want to use the word scalability. It allows us to scale to take care of populations and then to also really understand populations before they understand themselves. And so there's a lot to do. There's a lot, multiple different sides of it to talk about in medicine.
Right. I mean, and that's one of the things I think that I talked about in the intro is the kind of the misnomer behind it is, I think a lot of people think AI is just this, you know, transient being that's just, it can control itself and do whatever it wants. But, really, someone develops a model and then that model is, you guys would implement the data into that model that you want, and then it can do the things that you want it to do. So you do, in essence, control what it does.
Absolutely, and it has to with every aspect of technology and data. There has to be appropriate guardrails to control the risk, not only to the consumer, but also to the health and the risk of safety. And so, you know, AI is. I'm going to use an example. AI is going to help us improve how we read CAT scans. So CAT scans are now read by radiologists and MRIs are read by radiologists. And now they'll have the opportunity to have AI help us read those more accurately. Miss so we don't miss any smaller lesions that we potentially could have seen earlier with those MRIs. And so we're looking for variances with those scans. AI is going to be a much better us to utilize that from an objective standpoint. Still, there's the art of medicine and how do we really use that. I still think that radiologists are going to have to learn how to use AI to our advantage. Also, you're never going to see a complete negating of the need for radiologists at this point because there is the art of medicine and the other subjective factors that AI has a hard time computing sometimes in that algorithm. So I think that's a really good example of how it's being utilized for the good. Another great example that we're looking at is how do we understand risk in populations? And what I mean by that, how do we know someone's going to develop diabetes before they know they're going to develop diabetes? Or if a child is 7 and their parents have consumer habits of, as we're looking to consumer data, we're looking into all these other data feeds. How can we help understand that 7-year-old is going to be at risk for diabetes when he's 22 due to his sedentary lifestyle and his family's consumer habits? And so those are the opportunities we're going to see in the near future that really help us risk stratify ourselves and understand our risk for health. But also, how do we help those individuals that need behavior changes to improve their long-term health? And so, I do see the risk of AI as well from you talk about it's going to put people's jobs at risk because you're going to really learn that AI is a great tool, but it's also going to push and strain the system from that bandwidth. Do we need to have that much labor cost and what it can help and replace? So there's also cons to how it's going to be utilized as well. And we've already felt that in the medical field. Is this going to replace my job?
Right. I mean, on that note, and I want to go back to some of the stuff you're talking about, but I kind of feel like, and I get this sense from some of my other friends that are nurses and ER doctors. I mean, it kind of seems like there's a lot of strain and stress anyway in the healthcare industry as far as people being overworked. I mean, is this something that could maybe alleviate some of that, or do you think it's going to have a direct impact more on administration and that side of employment?
I think it'll be both. As we're talking about the appropriate triage and utilization of healthcare, one company that I've met with recently, and that's another other cool part of my job is I really get to go explore the landscape of the new cool shiny things that's happening in medicine, because they want me to buy their services, and so I get brought a lot of these vendors. One vendor in particular, which was a really cool concept. It's basically a nurse triage line, and so you have an AI that can that you have a bot on your phone that you basically use, and you tell them all the symptoms of what you're having. It kind of takes a history, doesn't do the physical, but you kind of tell them the physical symptoms, and it kind of gives you a pretty good understanding of how sick you are and what you need to be doing, and if you do need to seek emergency room treatment, or if you need to seek urgent care treatment, or just family practice doc. And so it's going to help us triage. With that, it's going to help with efficiencies in those overworked, overstressed ERs, right?
Right.
So we only want the sickest of the sick in the ER.
Right.
So how do we keep those people that aren't sick out of the ER? And those are the benefits that we can see using AI, but how do we get that technology into everyone's hand and safely use it? And that's where we're kind of struggling a little bit right now, is how, besides one vendor that's trying to do this, how does everyone get access to this to help us make a true impact across the nation?
Right. Because I mean, in what you said, I've got a buddy who's a nurse in a local hospital here, and he says they see the same, they have a handful of people that literally come in every week and they just use them as a doctor in the ER, which is a total misuse of our emergency services. I mean, it's it's taking up bed space that other people that really need it, can't get.
How do we do remote patient monitoring? Like what I mean by that is, you have a blood pressure cuff, you have a weight, you have a O2 sensor at home, and all these feed into an algorithm, AI algorithm, and it can kind of predict how you're going to get sick and when you're going to get sick, or it's going to remind you to take your medicine. So there's a lot of benefit to it.
Right.
The one thing that we have to, as I see benefit. The other thing is, how do we keep this from having ethical uses? And that's also a big concern in medicine, is ethically what is right and what is wrong. And we're still there's a lot of gray in that space with AI and how we use it. Medicine's also been felt to be it's the art of medicine, right? And we can't lose the art or the subjective feeling of medicine. And so I see pros and cons with it, but ultimately I think it's going to be a tremendous tool to help us be more efficient with our time and help us take better care of patients long term.
Yeah, I think the time efficiency is the big takeaway from that. In kind of my research, I've found some things that it improves is like diagnostic accuracy, personalized treatment plans, and then even predicting patient outcomes. And I think you're right. If you can take those things and shed hours off of your day, but then you take that the art of the doctor, the art of medicine, and you apply it to what the info that you gather, the data that you receive from the AI. Like, I mean, that could be amazing.
Yeah, in the footprint, or the bandwidth of how many patients we can see is going to go up with using AI. And it's going to be more accurate. The information we receive from it's going to be accurate. But how do we validate it? How do we understand the appropriate use, and how do we put guardrails on it? And that's still the kind of the wild west with AI right now. I do think long term we'll have some governmental restrictions on AI, especially in the medical field. You think about how in medicine, it's difficult to obtain a medical license, and it's very stringent with the laws and regs we have in patient information and safety and HIPAA. All these legal and compliance issues that we're starting to uncover with AI, they're only going to continue to grow as it integrates into the healthcare delivery system.
Right, which just slows everything down.
Yeah.
So is it actually helping? I guess you start getting government into anything, and it not that I'm anti-government, but it does tend to slow processes down, and
It does. I don't like the VC capitalistic world. Things happen at a very fast pace, but sometimes that can also be harmful. and so the appropriate utilization of this tool has to be considered because there is long-term ramifications with it. And once AI learns a specific algorithm, it's going to really, the sky's the limit. You think how far we've come in the past. You talked about it in your lecture a little bit. In the past 20 years, how far we've come with it.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the past 18 months, the past 2 years since ChatGPT launched, you think about how far we've come in 18 months.
Right.
So what's the next 20 years going to look like?
It's scary.
And that's the great, and it's great unknown. So there has to be some guardrails with how it's going to be utilized, and to make sure it's being utilized as an appropriate tool for good. Because I do think that with anything else, there's a reason Instagram picks up on what I'm talking about with my wife, and then shows me like where we're going to eat tonight. Well, that's what pops up on my feed.
Right.
New hot restaurants in Kansas City. So, how do we use it to help us and not hinder us? And I think that we're still going to learn this process. We're just in the dating phase with AI.
Right. That's a great way to put it.
I think there's a lot of interest on both sides.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it. Dating phase. So one other big one I want to talk about, and you kind of brushed on it, but data security. Because I know this is a huge hot topic in the health industry, and there's all kinds of leaked information. People's information is constantly leaked out there. What's your opinion on that, and where do you see stuff heading?
Well, I would be lying to you if I said I didn't have a concern about it. I think that as we talk about our biggest threat to us as humanity, it's how smart we are and how we use the things we're developing. And I think that data security ultimately is very, very important as you think about some of the breaches that have happened recently and
Right.
how it's being utilized. But some of the, you talk about, this is, going a little bit deep here, but 23andMe, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that data is owned by a Chinese company, right? All your DNA is owned. All your report out of your human genome is owned by a Chinese company.
That's frightening.
How's data being utilized?
Right.
We don't know. And so those are the things that we, as we're thinking about, it's cool that I recognize that I have a brother I didn't know about that lives in Reno. That's awesome.
Right.
And that's super cool to know. But the long-term consequences of that from a data perspective, we don't.
Right. Was it worth it? Yeah, the exposure is insane.
Yeah. And I'm not smart enough to talk about the long-term risk of data security. But I know that as, cybersecurity, cyber attacks are becoming, that's the new police and the new criminals, right?
Right.
And so it's easy. It's, I have friends' kids that know how to hack already.
Right.
They're 7, 8 years old. They know how to write code. And so it's a way of the future, something I don't have in my skill sets, and I don't have my head wrapped around what's going to happen in the next 20, 30 years, but it's something we need to have in our forethoughts. We need to be kind of game planning on, because otherwise the naive nature of life, it could come back and haunt us.
Right. I mean, so one thing, and we don't have to explore it too far here, but, something I will encourage you to look at more, BlockStar, where this podcast is going on to, they have their own artificial intelligence, but it is all operating on the blockchain. So do you understand the blockchain at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I have some, foundational knowledge.
So essentially it's a decentralized exchange, which is good. You don't want a centralized exchange. So all your info is not just floating out there in space. In blockchain, kind of picture a chain of digital blocks, not Legos, unfortunately, but each block stores data in a secure and transparent manner. The blocks are linked together in a chain, creating a decentralized and tamper-proof ledger. So nobody can mess with it. Nobody can steal it. It's done through a network of computers through complex cryptographic processes. Once these blocks are verified without a consensus from the network, each blockchain is, it's an absolute revolutionary technology that ensures trust, security, transparency. Various industries. I think it's the wave of the future as far as finance, healthcare, social media. Like I think everything will go to blockchain at some point in time. So it is one thing I think would be cool to talk to your vendors about if if their AIs can be implemented into, if blockchain can be implemented into their AI models to help you guys with that data security, because that is,
Interesting.
it could be a total game changer for you guys as far as ethics go, that you can guarantee that, everybody's information is safe using this artificial intelligence.
That's, we're going to have to figure that out, right? And so, how do we keep people safe? And if blockchain's the answer, that's fantastic. I don't know enough about it, but I think that as we're thinking about AI and how it's going to be utilized in keeping our information safe, we're going to need to have a secure lock system.
Right.
So thanks for bringing that to me, and I will do some reading and investigation on it. So, uh, really going back to what I was just to kind of recapping some of the things that we're talking about. I think AI has tremendous potential to help humanity from a medical standpoint, from a behavior standpoint, from a finance standpoint, from who we are as humans.
Right.
But it puts us at risk for many things we've never considered.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to balance the good and the bad, and then we have to be able to control the risk of it. It's calculated risk with everything we do in life. And so I would love to see, AI integrated further, the population health tools that are obviously on the docket. I want to take care of people. And so, you think about how healthcare has not kept up with the pace of consumerism. My example is Amazon. Amazon knows what you want before you know you want it.
Yeah. Frightening.
Right?
Yep.
Frightening. But how do we keep people healthy with that same logic, right? How do we know that people are going to, if you continue this path, you're going to get sick? And if you continue eating like this and not exercising and smoking, this is with your risk factors in your DNA and the fact that you live in a food desert and your finances are, you don't have the ability to have fresh fruit and vegetables every day. So, it's going to help us figure out who's at extreme risk for disease and how we could use that to improve longitudinal health in this country. And I'm super excited about some of those opportunities. That's my geeky doctor nature, but it's, all we want to do is make a difference. And we know our current healthcare system is fragmented and broken. And how do we give it some type of continuity and more holistic view? And I think AI can help us do that long term.
Yeah. I mean, some of the other ones I've kind of stumbled across, but like remote patient monitoring, pharmaceutical supply chains, health insurance claims. I mean, it could speed up all of that stuff.
It will. And, you don't know what you don't know. And so we're going to think of all these new uses for AI as well. And as we continue to vet those and how it really improves, patients' happiness, patients' health, and ultimately financial security, the rate of inflation in medicine continues to outgrow any other rate of inflation of any other service. And, by 2030, 25% of our GDP in this country will be medical costs.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So it's unsustainable how we're going. So we have to change our behaviors if we're going to change this overall cost of medicine in the United States. So.
Wow. Well, hey, man, I don't want to keep you anymore. I know you got a big trip you're going on. Very jealous. But I really appreciate you giving us the time. It was awesome to hear your insight.
Yeah, it's as we continue to learn more about it, I'd love to come back and chat with you guys. And if I hear anything more on blockchain, I'll definitely bring it back to you and how it's being utilized to secure that data. So, really appreciate you guys having me today, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, brother. Have a good night.
All right, man. Take care.
Bye bye. So, as we wrap this up today, we are going to end, as per usual, with a question to the David sarcastic chatbot. And I'm going to shorten it to DSCB so I don't have to say that over and over. So, I asked him, how do you think you could be of help in the medical industry? Its answer, oh, I don't know. Maybe by entertaining patients with my charming personality and cracking some jokes to lighten the mood. I'm sure doctors and nurses are just dying to have a sarcastic chatbot around to make their lives easier. So, we are definitely not going to deploy the DSCB out into the world of medicine, but always good for a laugh. Well, thanks for joining me today on another BlockStar podcast. I am your host, Ryan Comet, signing off.